Welcome to this lecture on animal behavior. Today, we are going to explore one of the most fascinating and visually stunning forces in nature known as intersexual selection. Have you ever wondered why some animals develop incredibly elaborate, almost ridiculous features just to attract a mate? By the end of this video, you will not only understand the biology behind this, but you will also be able to mathematically calculate exactly how picky females can drive the evolution of an entire species. Let us dive in. To begin, imagine you are at a grand dance. You probably would not just pick the very first person who walks through the door. Instead, you look for someone who dances beautifully or has a charming personality. In the animal kingdom, this exact same process happens every single day. When animals look for a mate, one sex, which is usually the female, takes on the role of the careful shopper. She evaluates the displays, colors, or songs of the other sex. This careful picking and choosing is the foundation of what biologists call intersexual selection. Now that we have a picture of this grand dance, let us define what is actually happening biologically. Intersexual selection is a specific type of natural selection where individuals of one sex choose to mate with individuals of the opposite sex based on desirable traits. We most commonly refer to this as female choice. Why? Because females typically invest much more energy into producing eggs and raising offspring, making them the choosier sex by absolute necessity. In response to this choosiness, males evolve elaborate ornaments, complex courtship dances, or beautiful songs just to attract the female's attention. This brings us to a fascinating question, and one of the biggest mysteries in evolutionary biology. Why do some animals have traits that seem to make survival much harder? Think of a peacock dragging a massive, heavy, brightly colored tail. This tail makes it incredibly hard to fly and makes it very easy for predators to spot him. If basic survival was the only thing that mattered in nature, such a cumbersome and dangerous tail would have disappeared long ago. Yet these traits persist and even grow more extreme over thousands of generations. So, how do we solve this mystery? Intersexual selection provides the perfect answer. That massive tail exists simply because peahens absolutely refuse to mate with males who lack it. The reproductive benefit of getting a mate completely outweighs the survival cost of carrying that heavy tail. If you do not survive, you cannot reproduce. But if you survive and no one mates with you, your genes are still lost. This powerful dynamic drives the evolution of incredible biodiversity and sexual dimorphism, which is the phenomenon where males and females of the same species look completely different. Now that we understand the biological concept, let us look at how biologists actually study this in the field. To truly understand how intersexual selection changes a population over time, biologists use mathematical models. They measure a concept called the selection differential. This helps us quantify exactly how strong the female preference is. We do this by comparing the traits of the males who successfully mate against the traits of all males in the general population. If females are extremely picky, the difference between the successful males and the average males will be very large. This concept leads us directly to a simple but powerful mathematical formula. The selection differential, represented by the letter S, is calculated by subtracting the population mean from the selected mean. Let us break down these symbols. S is the selection differential, measured in the same units as the trait itself, like centimeters. The symbol mu selected represents the average trait value of only those males who were successfully chosen by females to mate. The symbol mu population represents the average trait value of all males in the entire population before any mating took place. If females become pickier and only choose males with extremely large traits, the value of mu selected increases, which makes the selection differential much larger. Before we move on, let us see this formula in action with a concrete example involving the long-tailed widowbird. Biologists measure the population and find the average tail length of all adult males is 15 centimeters. However, the females are very picky. The males that actually secured mates have an average tail length of 25 centimeters. We want to find the selection differential. We substitute mu selected with 25 and mu population with 15. Subtracting 15 from 25 gives us 10. Physically, this means the female's strict mating preferences have created a selection pressure of 10 centimeters on the male tail length. So, we have calculated the selection differential, but this brings us to an important question. How much will the tail length actually grow in the next generation of baby birds? To figure this out, we must account for heritability. Heritability is a measure of how much of the trait is passed down through genetics, rather than being shaped by the environment. By combining the selection differential with heritability, we can calculate the evolutionary response. This response tells us the actual physical change in the population's average tail length for the very next generation. To calculate this evolutionary response, we use a famous biological formula known as the breeder's equation. The equation is R equals H squared times S. Let us look at what each part means. The symbol R stands for the evolutionary response, which is the actual change in the trait's average size that we want to find. The symbol H squared represents the heritability. This is always a number between 0 and 1, indicating how strongly the trait is passed down genetically. Finally, the symbol S is the selection differential we just learned how to calculate, representing the evolutionary push from the females. Now that we have our formula, let us apply it to our widow birds to predict the next generation's traits. We are given that the heritability of tail length is 0.6. We also know from our previous calculation that the selection differential S is 10 centimeters. We want to find the evolutionary response, R. We simply multiply the heritability, 0.6, by the selection differential, 10. This gives us an evolutionary response of 6 centimeters. This means that in the very next generation, the average tail length of the entire male population will increase by 6 centimeters, moving from 15 to 21 centimeters. Let us visualize everything we have just learned by looking at this selection differential graph. On the horizontal axis, we have the male trait size, such as tail length. The blue bell curve on the left represents all the males in the initial population, centered around the population mean. The red curve on the right represents only the lucky males that the females actually chose to mate with. Notice how the red curve is shifted significantly to the right? The distance between the peak of the blue curve and the peak of the red curve is our selection differential, S. This visual perfectly captures how female choice pulls the population toward larger, more exaggerated traits. We have covered a lot of ground today, so let us summarize the most important ideas. First, intersexual selection is the evolutionary process where the choosiness of one sex dictates the physical traits of the other. By acting as the ultimate judges, females force males to evolve spectacular ornaments, just to win a chance at reproduction. Second, we can precisely measure this evolutionary pressure using the selection differential. Finally, by combining that pressure with heritability in the breeder's equation, we can predict the genetic future of an entire species. You now have the tools to understand the breathtaking beauty and bizarre traits we see across the animal kingdom. Great job!